You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're going to start this thing off right. Raider! Everything runs through Lubbock.
Great to be with you again on Locked On at Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. And thanks as always to those making us their first listen on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. Today's reaction episode brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use our code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, this is where I have to say things about the game, and I expect you to join me in this conversation. So let's just rip this Band-Aid off. It was the blackest of Black Fridays. Only a 50-point margin, second worst loss in the history of the series, as it was the series swan song. Red Raiders, Longhorns now depart as conference colleagues. Few things to dive into, however. I know this feels like a game where you burn the tape and you move on and you try to respond. We'll get to what that response might be like coming up in just a moment. But, you know, as you're down there on the sideline, obviously calling the game there on the radio broadcast, I'm curious what kind of vibe you're picking up, because as I'm watching through television, you know, there are various points as a fan that I'm thinking, I don't know if our guys showed up. Did they get off the bus? Was it a complete no-show? And then there are other points where I think, okay, I kind of see some guys fighting. I think on the defensive side of the football, I see Taj Brooks doing his Taj Brooks thing. So were you just totally outgunned? Where do we begin the conversation, and what were you seeing and feeling from your perspective there on the sideline Friday at DKR?
Yes. That was not my favorite. It was pretty much a miserable experience. I'm looking forward to never going to Austin again, actually. You've given up, let me think about that. In the last two trips there, you've given up, let me make sure I'm doing the math here correctly, 127 points in your last two trips. Yeah, and you've scored...
How many overtime periods?
You scored 42, so you've been outscored 127 to 42 in your last two trips there. I've seen this movie way too many times, especially there. I think what is fascinating is that this is my take, my opinion. If you don't agree with it, fine. This is what I see. This is what I feel. These are all the things. Texas always takes you very seriously. They may not act like you're a rival. They may not. I'm talking about the team.
Yeah.
I don't really care what fans think or whatever on either side of this, but they always they do take you very seriously. It's an in-state deal. I don't think, Iowa State or the West Virginias or the Oklahoma States, I think they get a benefit of a potential, I don't take you as seriously vibe, whereas I don't think Texas Tech ever gets that benefit. And so and in this particular case, I think they were waiting on you. I think they were, they're healthy. Other than their running back, they were healthy. Everybody that was questionable for them played nearly the whole game. Obviously, the commissioner was there. That was clearly very much a storyline. Apparently, that was played on loop in their locker room all week leading up to this game. I could see by the body language across and kind of the pointing and the gesturing and all that and warm-ups. I was like, oh yeah, I was thinking that this Red Raider team better be ready for the initial onslaught here. And this is what's happened with Texas. The one knock on Texas was that they couldn't put anybody away. And they even in so many ways had a hard time putting you away before you just before the avalanche and the dam broke. Because you held them to plenty of field goal attempts, just kind of hanging in there. Don't know if I would have gone for it on fourth down right before the half, because you kind of gifted them another 3 by not converting it. But you're trying to win. So I certainly see being aggressive, and you want to get something right before halftime, but you don't get it. You gift them another 3, and that takes it from a 2-score game at that point to a 3-score game. But no, they were, and it's pretty clear they put their best game together all year. really. That was the knock. They couldn't put teams away, couldn't put Kansas State away, couldn't put Wyoming away until the fourth quarter-ish. Couldn't put TCU away, couldn't put Houston away. And they hung on in all those games and won, but it wasn't super impressive. They didn't cover the spread, I think, in most of those. Maybe they did in Wyoming, but that was a late cover. But the other three, I think they didn't, according to the folks in Vegas. So, but of course they play their best game or most complete game against you. But I think part of it is they were waiting on you. They had a chance to punch their ticket to Arlington, and you just couldn't. And then to add into all that, into this nasty bowl of soup that we're making right here. No Jalen Hutchings, no Miles Price, no Jacob Rodriguez. I mean, you hadn't lost since Jacob Rodriguez came back into the fold. I mean, let's think about that for a minute. And then no Tyler Owens ended up not playing in this game. And then I could give you a list of about 7 or 8 guys. Thankfully, Cam Watts is going to be okay. That was a very scary moment. But Jordan Sanford, Duda Banks left to go to the locker room, came back, didn't play. I mean, there was a long list of folks that just kind of you're just like, dude, our guys are dropping like flies. I heard one of the medical guys go, we hadn't had a game like this since West Virginia, and we all know what happened in the West Virginia game and how many guys got hurt that day. And you were already depleted, and so and then they're really good. They were very motivated. Boom goes the dynamite, and no more trips to the ATX for this guy.
That's exactly right. I don't think, though. I don't know. What do you think about the effort quotient? Was Tech like hit in the mouth and never responded, or were they just totally outgunned by a roster that doesn't compare in any way to what we have here in Lubbock? Really,
I don't want to. That's by the way, that stadium was as packed as I've ever seen it. I've been there with some sellouts before, but they've since expanded, and then since the expansions, I mean, I've not seen a crowd, that, present and full and loud and all those things. So I think that was part of it too. And so when you get hit in the mouth a little bit, I think that it can be overwhelming in an environment like that, and you did not handle it well. I do think, though, you competed for a bit. But and you really never, I don't want to say, because you tried, but you're some of the aspects that I thought that shocked me in this game. Your special teams had been a reason why you had won 3 in a row. Your special teams had been a huge part of what had gotten you to bowl eligibility and been a bright spot really on the season. And your special teams, just was a significant loss across the board. Austin did not have his best game. Reese Burkhart couldn't get it in the end zone when he'd just been a touchback machine. They come out of the locker room and return one for a touchdown. You get the punt blocked. It just, I think a tackle on the edge was supposed to block one way and he blocked the other. And it's like, there's 3 guys just swallowed that one up. So that was just kind of a meltdown. I thought defensively, you did a good job. One of Texas's biggest issues is going to be if they can't, win a conference championship, or if they can't get in the playoff or whatever, it's going to be because they're not very good in the red zone on offense. They're one of the worst teams in the country at converting scores when they get in the red zone. And you capitalized on that and hung in there a bit. So I credit your defense for holding them to a lot of field goal attempts. Now, there's a couple of long runs and this and that going that it's not all just roses. And then offensively, you just had no answer. I thought Taj ran hard. I thought you tried. I think Barron tried to do as good as he can. I've seen a lot of criticism toward Barron, and obviously I know there's been criticism for Coach Kitley when things don't go well. But I think they sat on routes and they kind of loaded the box, and every yard that you gained in the run game, it was just Taj not wanting to go down, which is what we've seen. But you had a big problem in getting people open, or 2, blocking long enough to get them open, and neither existed.
Yeah, I don't remember often seeing the UT defensive front going backwards. I remember often seeing the Texas Tech offensive front going backwards. Got to credit all day that UT defensive interior, the defensive front was just insane what they were doing to our offensive line. And we'll see those guys, I'm sure, playing on Sundays in the future. And as I sit there and think about it, Chris, I don't know. I mean, we saw a week ago, I think the opening line was 13.5 or something like that for UT. And my initial thought then was, man, can we cover that? So it was kind of a conversation where
I can't. Yeah.
No. As a realistic fan, I thought, okay, I don't even know if I'm really considering like going down there and shocking the world necessarily. I'm just a fan. Guys in the locker room have to think differently, obviously. But as a fan, I'm not really thinking about, hey, we're going to go shock the world or things like that. But I'm wondering, how are you going to compete against a team that is far more talented than you, far deeper than you, and obviously has a lot more to play for as far as aspirations beyond the regular season? And that's where I think some fans are going to, have to decide for yourself. Some fans will have to figure out, do I feel like this team was a no-show? Did they compete? Were they just simply beaten by a much, much better team? Because taking a loss, there's no great shame in that. But if you're not even getting off the bus, there's plenty of shame in that. So I still don't really know how I feel about that. But I think we saw it some various times, guys really fighting their butts off. But I don't care what you have to say about a quarterback, an offensive coordinator, wide receivers, new recruits at skill positions, whatever. If you get beat like a rented mule along the offensive line, you will go nowhere. And you may be able to be a bowl eligible program still with that kind of performance up front or that kind of capability up front. And being a consistently bowl eligible program is the step that this program needs to take and get back into the realm of. So I'm certainly not acting like that's beneath us. But if you have some aspirations of competing for hardware, look, here's some expert analysis after 100 plus years of football. Trench work makes the dream work. And man, UT had it in spades, particularly again on that defensive side of things. So that was one thing that was just so apparent to me very early on. The line of scrimmage was going the wrong way for Texas Tech almost every snap. And it was a miracle somehow that Taj Brooks winds up with 5 yards per carry, 95 yards on 19 attempts, because again, I just couldn't have been any more impressed and jealous, green with envy with what UT was throwing out there up front defensively. First, today's episode brought to you by Gametime, and you shouldn't have to sweat it out when buying tickets to your favorite events, and with Gametime, you won't, because it's always a breeze. Using the Gametime app, where you're going to find killer last-minute deals, views from every seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it begins, which means Gametime is the place to find last-minute seats for any event. The fastest, easiest way to buy tickets, and not just fast, but it's also secure and simple to use when you download the Gametime app. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime by downloading the Gametime app, creating an account, and then use our code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. That's Locked On College, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use our promo code Locked On College for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today for last-minute tickets at the lowest price, guaranteed. Again, I just couldn't have been any more impressed and jealous, green with envy with what UT was throwing out there up front defensively.
Yeah, and you showed them some different blocking schemes, some different looks to try to create some runs that you hadn't previously shown, just because of not trying to just run it at those two monsters. And then anytime you brought two tight ends in the game, they would bring in their third D tackle, who's one of the best in the Big 12 as well. And he's a guy that'll be a starter for Texas next year, you would think, if those other two guys move on to the NFL as expected. But and keep in mind, you've got Rusty Stats, who's got an elbow issue that's going to require a medical procedure after the season. You've got Jacoby Jackson, who's got a shoulder issue and I think a back issue and then so, but this is the best you have. And so, boy, it just, you just felt, and it just kind of blew up on you. I mean, yeah. The offensive line, to your point, is going to be the biggest, that and like the tight end, which is kind of in some ways the same but different. That'll be the biggest thing to watch in the portal as it relates to immediate, success next year. And if you can get it fixed or get it quality help, and you hit with some portal additions, you like your chances in making a move next year. If you can't, we're going to be talking about the same things, unfortunately, because you can't. I don't know if you're ready to turn it over to a lot of those like guys that redshirted this year, and that's the problem. And I think you'll see some offensive linemen that are kind of in that in between, potentially look to depart the program and try to look to play elsewhere, and all that. And we'll talk a lot about a guy like Dalton Merriman, who transferred here from Blinn Junior College and had to sit out this past season. And a guy like Caleb Rodkey, who could potentially, play next year. But that I think you're nailing it, because it's been any credit to them and Taj and Hamby and Kitley and all that for cranking out. I mean, because Taj was, I think, what was it? It was either 6 of 8 or 7 of 9 on 100-yard games to finish up the season. And the 2 that he didn't, versus Texas, he was 95, and versus whatever other one that he didn't hit the 100-yard mark, I think he was at 98. So, I mean, he has been the model of consistency, and I just and poor Barron, man. I mean, speaking of somebody that needs. I hope if you're being harsh on him or grading him or because I've heard a lot of and seen a lot of criticism, I hope you grade on with a curve, because it's not going to surprise me if he needs to go see the doctor after the season's over, unfortunately. But he has not ever said anything, complained about it. I just simply floated the question to him, what was it, a week or so ago? I mean, what percentage are you at? And he kind of offered that, or how are you doing? And I think he offered up. So but it's hard to win that way when some key spots right there. But up front, man, I think it was just, and that's why this Texas team is different than so many of their teams previously, because they are so good up front, especially on the defensive side. And I mean, those 2 D linemen, and then the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year is right behind them. I know. So Jalen Ford, he takes advantage of all the things that those guys clean up, and he's able to go make a ton of plays because he's got this huge wall in front of him that's just enormous.
Yeah, I know that 57 is eye-popping, and you might think, like, offensively, wow, UT blowing you away, or even in the special teams game, whatever. I was blown away by that defense. That was really amazing. And I know that Texas Tech's offense has not been like some explosive or point-producing offense this year, but I was just blown away by what and you warned us last week. You talked about these guys up front for UT, and that's exactly what they were, as advertised. But Chris, I know that now, as you have done what you did here late in the season to earn a bowl trip, you've still got a chance to finish the year on a positive note, also as a winning record, which I think is very, very important to go out and win this bowl game, whatever it turns out to be. I don't know how you get over this sting, because it was a big sting, even for someone that's just thinking, man, can we cover instead of like dreaming of a win? Still was a big, big sting, because it wasn't just a loss. It was a 50-point loss. Finally got the 50 burger, and it was the worst one I've ever had. I don't know what the message has got to be, but you have to find a way to respond. So where do you think that conversation does actually kind of begin in the building? Is it where they just, as we're having this conversation on Sunday, have they already turned the page? How do you manage that if you're Joey McGuire? Because you got a chance to finish the right way, but boy, you have got to get over some extreme disappointment to do that.
Yeah, you spend your emotional equity on rooting for Oklahoma State this upcoming weekend, on trying to heal up and get a mental break from it for a bit after the grind that you've been through. But I think you do flush it. And then we're about to get into this weird coaching craziness and portal craziness. And you're going to have to kind of see, okay, what kind of roster are we taking into this bowl game? First of all, what bowl game are we going to get? And who's the opponent? And then who's even going to play in this bad boy? Is Taj Brooks going to play in it? Is Jalen Hutchings going to play in it? Because, I mean, in some ways, I totally get if those guys say, man, this isn't best for me to go play in a game in Shreveport or in Fort Worth against a service academy or an 8th place team in the Pac-12. However, for your program,
yes,
it makes a ton of sense, because now all these young bucks that are all like, now Jacob Rodriguez is good to go, and Marcus Ramon Edwards and Dylan Spencer and Colby Volson, excuse me, and TJ West and DJ Crest. And if you want to, Cameron Valdez, if you want to really kind of unleash a lot of the youth in here, that's what this next 2 to 4 weeks, depending on when you play, really is about. And plus, any senior that wants to suit up and roll, absolutely. But I could just see where there'd be some that may not go. I just don't know what to expect, I guess is what I'm saying. This is kind of the crazy part of college football when you get to this point. So that's why they've said anybody redshirting or anybody like that is eligible to play in the postseason, because guys transfer. Last year, no Donovan Williams, no Reggie Pearson, no Philip Liddy, no Kobe Minor. You had a handful of guys that would have played quite a bit that did not participate when you beat Ole Miss. And so what's that look like? But yeah, you got to flush that bad taste out of your mouth. You're never going to have to play in that stadium again. They don't want you in that stadium again. I heard it from a lot of folks, a lot of making fun of Lubbock, and you have to go live in Lubbock. I'm like, thankfully I do.
And I do want to thank all of the UT Rhodes Scholars who showed up in the YouTube comments to discuss academics following the game, which was a nice, surprising turn of events. I just can't imagine that we got into some academic conversation, but thanks to all the Rhodes Scholars for stroking the algorithm, and congratulations on the win.
I'm here for the sports, man.
We got a busy week coming up. Also, some moral authorities that showed up. When you win by 50, you become the authority on all, not just sports, Chris. You show up to discuss like character, principles, class, academics, traffic. I don't know. Everything, I guess, is up for discussion when you win by 50. So thanks for visiting with us in the YouTube comments. No beef with that. We got a busy week coming up, so hang with us on Locked On Texas Tech, because we do have bowl game considerations. We do have portal considerations just around the corner. We've got a coaching carousel going on, already engaged, that could affect Texas Tech or others in the Big 12 Conference. One coach already gone. See you later, Dana. And we also, Chris, I guess at some point in time, we'll discuss battling in Atlantis, as Grant McCaslin and the Red Raider men's basketball team showed up over the weekend and gave us a little bit to smile about. So we got that coming at you on the other side and throughout the week. Hope you guys had a happy Thanksgiving. Forget Black Friday. It's always been a nightmarish day for many reasons. This time football was a part of it. But Chris, I always enjoy the conversation with you, my man. Glad you made it back to the 806, and we'll do it again tomorrow.
Appreciated it. Hard to recap that one, but we did our best. It was the suck, as they say, and but you salute, you move on, and better times ahead, man. But yeah, we'll be here all week. Keep hope alive, everybody. That's all we had the other day. It was just a little bit of hope, a little bit of hope. I refuse to dim that hope light, man. I just won't. I won't put it out.
I think that candle's still burning. Let's go. Yeah. Follow Chris's lead. For Chris, I'm Casey. Thanks for joining us again. We hope to see you back here for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.